everyone, and welcome to the hashtag See Arthritis event. We're so happy to be here today in studio with Dr. Catherine Backman. Welcome, Catherine. May
Thank
I call
you.
you Catherine?
You may.
Oh, thank you. I know our audience will learn you're retired, so I feel a little more comfortable calling you Catherine now that you're retired. Let me tell the audience a little bit about you and how this conversation fits into this year's hashtag C Arthritis event. Dr. Bachman is a professor emerita at the University of British Columbia and worked for over 40 years as an occupational therapist. So if there is something about occupational therapists, she knows about it. We're going to learn that shortly. She also has a doctoral degree in healthcare and epidemiology. In her career, she enjoyed the combination of learning, teaching, and doing research. So she was one of those health professionals that spun a lot of plates and spun them very, very well for quite a few years. And that all came with her role at UBC because of the collaboration with students, interdisciplinary colleagues, and people living with chronic illnesses who were engaged in teaching and in research. And though she just recently retired, she does continue to volunteer with professional organizations while wrapping up a few academic commitments. So welcome again, Catherine. We're so honored that you took the time to join us today.
Thank you. Happy to be with you.
Yeah. So for our audience today, you have been a cornerstone, a mentor, first a mentee, then a mentor, a teacher, someone who was very senior in the research world in this area. We wanted to talk to you about sort of what you have seen over the years and what you feel is where we are kind of state of the art right now. So if the theme of the meeting is about ascending to new heights, you have to kind of know where you're at presently. So first of all, we're going to talk about just occupational therapy in general, and explain to the audience sort of what types of treatments, if you will, that are non-medication, that are occupational therapy approaches in the setting of not just chronic disease, but specifically to forms of arthritis. So, what does the research literature tell us today about the use of sort of some of the tools that you've used over the years with your clients in both rheumatoid arthritis and other forms of arthritis? So what's state of the art in occupational therapy? And what do you see as sort of things that are going to happen in the near future?
Okay. So in general, in occupational therapy, we're interested in occupation, the things that people are doing in their day-to-day lives. And that's going to be highly variable because think of all the different jobs and activities and school and family caregiving and all of those sorts of things that people engage in. So state of the art in occupational therapy, kind of a loaded question, but we would want to be helping people who are living with arthritis that are finding some challenges in some of those tasks of daily living. We'd want to find ways, workarounds, hacks, ways of enabling them to do those kinds of activities. So it's really a partnership, a collaboration to figure out where are the challenges or where are some of the difficulties, what are some of the things that people can and cannot do, and what are the ways that we can help them do the things that are most important that they need or want to do in their day-to-day lives. So it could be related to work or caring for a child or going to school, leisure activities. What are the things that make life worth living, and how can we help you do that? So sometimes that's those are providing little tricks of the trade that we've learned from other people with arthritis. Sometimes it's organizing the things that you need to do and setting priorities because some of the symptoms of arthritis get in the way of doing everything that we want to do. Everybody has challenges in managing time or fitting everything in. So it could be related to conserving your energy or deciding where to spend your energy. It could be pain management techniques. It could be little gadgets and gadgets that help you overcome some of the barriers in the environment. those are the types of things that we're looking at, and really doing it from that consultative, collaborative perspective, with working side by side with clients and they're the driver, we're the passenger, and figure out where we want to go.
I love that driver and passenger metaphor. I have had the benefit of seeing an occupational therapist over my 36 years of living with rheumatoid arthritis, all of which it's not been easy, to be sure. And I think the public often thinks of occupational therapy as people who make splints, people who fit you for, but it's actually this problem-solving piece you talk about, integrated with these actual tools, splints, braces, etc., orthotics, things like that. It's the marrying of those two things that really help me as a person living with the disease and trying to continue fully participating in everything that I wanted to
Right.
participate in. Yeah, I think you phrased that very, very nicely. Can you tell us, Catherine, what are some of the most common, speaking of devices, let's just go there for a second. There are some that are commonly known about by people living with the disease. They hang on the pharmacy shelves. They often can be custom made, but tell us, what are the most popular ones and why? I'm assuming it's related to common problems that are more common than another common problem in
Right.
disease. But can you just sort of talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So if we talk about splints or orthoses, so these are devices that you'd put onto a body part. So some of the most common ones in inflammatory types of arthritis, so rheumatoid arthritis, for example, would be a wrist splint. So something that would stabilize the wrist joint, but the fingers and thumb are free to move. So that's fairly common. And the reason it's common is because the wrist is one of the primary joints affected by rheumatoid arthritis. It's also fairly common for carpal tunnel syndrome. So there's other musculoskeletal conditions that affect the wrist. And the purpose of a wrist splint is to stabilize the wrist joint. It can provide a period of local rest. So when you have swelling or active inflammation in the joint, it's important to get rest in terms of sleep or rest periods during the day, but you can localize it to the wrist joint by wearing a splint if it's just the wrist joint that's affecting you, or the wrist joint's one of the primary joints. But it's also by stabilizing the wrist joint, so if there's some weakness or it gives some additional support to the joint, then it enables a stronger grip. So if you need to be lifting or carrying different objects, this is where people often find a wrist splint to be invaluable, is for specific activities. So it doesn't work for everybody all of the time. And this is what makes it difficult when things are on a shelf and you see them in the store and they're promoted for arthritis, and they're not going to be for everybody with arthritis. So you really have to marry together or match together. Well, where do you have pain? Where do you have swelling? What's it getting in the way of doing? Because if you really need to manipulate your fingers and thumbs, then stabilizing a joint may or may not work for you.
And
But if you
fit, I imagine, is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so lifting wrist splints really good for people who have pain, perhaps some swelling in their wrist joint. They need to do some lifting and carrying, and it helps. And they wear them for those particular activities. So they might be wearing them at work. They might be wearing them for pushing a stroller or lifting a kid in and out of a car seat, something like that. So they'll wear it for specific activities. In a period of acute pain or inflammation, they might wear them for a larger portion of the day, because it really does relieve some of that pain and inflammation at the local level. So research on wrist splints shows that they have to fit well, because people aren't going to wear them if they're irritating. But you really do want to get a little bit of stabilization. You need to be able to still grip. So you need to have that freedom to move your fingers and thumbs as needed for those different activities. It takes a while to break them in or get used to them. So initially they'll feel like an encumbrance or a hindrance to the activities, but you usually gradually increase your strength and dexterity over a period of 2, 3, maybe as long as 4 weeks. But after that, then they do relieve pain, and they do enable people increase grip strength. So they do enable people to lift and grip and carry things.
Yeah.
So it needs to be the right device for the right purpose in order for it to work. Other common ones are finger splints. Sometimes that's a positioning device to keep a wayward finger out of the way when you're doing things. Because sometimes the joints are in odd positions, or you get a little bit of a contracture somewhere, or sometimes the ligaments that are supporting the joint are a little bit lax and they're not supporting the joint. And so silver ring splints are popular for some people, just to position some of the smaller joints in the fingers, and then that enables them to use their hands for the activities they need to do. And probably the next most common device would be supportive shoes with or without a foot orthosis. So a shoe can be really important in terms of stabilizing the hind foot, so the joint just below where your ankle and foot meet, and foot orthoses can then also be supporting the arches of the foot. And you can't get from point A to point B if you're in a lot of pain or discomfort. And so a good pair of shoes, well-fitting pair of shoes, and a foot orthosis can often make the difference in supporting your feet, and that provides a stable base for your knees and hips and back as well. So it can be very important to get a well-fitting shoe and foot orthosis. And again, you can get those off the shelf, but they're not necessarily always going to fit you. So a really good fit is important. And this is where you maybe want to see, in the case of the feet, a podiatrist or a physical therapist or occupational therapist. Maybe all of them can weigh in that regard, and an occupational therapist or an orthotist in terms of the wrist splints.
And people can, if you're working for a company and you have an employer provided health insurance plan, seeking the advice or the help of an occupational therapist is often a part of those plans.
Right.
Often there is a stipend or an allowance for a type of orthotic. And then in terms of where people go to get those things, they're either, prescribed by an occupational therapist or by a podiatrist, for example. And most cities in Canada, which is where we're situated, have larger type of stores where they have actually trained personnel that can help. They might not be trained in arthritis, but they'll be trained on the devices. And so we have always found those to be very helpful, rather than going, nothing against the drugstore devices, but if you need something where there's, some more consideration into the fit or the actual choice that you make of a range of products, that can be very helpful.
Yeah, it is important to know that if you have health insurance, it may cover there'll be a limit to what they will cover. And so you don't want to misspend the limit, which is a reason for going to see somebody who knows a little bit more about some of those devices. So you might be offered $400 or $500 for foot orthoses every 2 or 3 years, or you could use your health spending account in some insurance plans for any of these types of things that you might want to spend them on. But typically they won't be covered if you just buy them off the shelf in a supermarket or a drugstore.
They require a prescription.
They require a prescription so that they know that they're medically necessary pieces of equipment. So you do want to keep that in mind if you're in order to make the best use of some of the financial resources that are available to you.
Right, that's a good point. When we are using a device and And, you know, I think at some point you do become reliant on it if you want to continue to participate in that activity. How do you know, Catherine, when you know, you kind of need to move on to the next stage and seek out surgery? Is it really just about pain? I imagine function is also a part of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think pain and function are big parts of it. So um, you might just need a new device because things wear out. So it's just like you don't have buy one pair of shoes when you turn 20 and you wear them till you're 65. Um, but so the shape of your body changes over time and your needs, and there's some wear and tear on these different devices. So it could be that you need a new orthosis or you need a new splint. So if there's a return of pain or a new discomfort, then something might have changed, and you maybe want to go back to the original health professional who prescribed it or helped you with it. Or maybe you're seeing a new one. So, you're maybe looking for a new device. You may It may have been suggested that you use a splint as a conservative treatment for a joint. And this can apply to the knee joint, like with a knee brace, or the wrist joint, like with the wrist splint, or shoes and walking with a cane or a walking pole in terms of the ankle or foot, for example. And then people follow your physician and surgeon follow it over time. So you might be trying this out while you're on a waiting list to see an orthopedic surgeon, for example. You may have been trying it out at the advice of an orthopedic surgeon who says, well, try this first before we do the wrist surgery, because you can often delay surgery with, and it's not just the device by itself, it's a combination of exercise and some lifestyle management and the device and so forth. And maybe that'll work. And if you're satisfied with that's happening, you have all these checks and balances or pros and cons of having surgery. And it's got to be in the context of your life and all the demands that are on you. And if the splint is doing enough for you that you think I can live with this and I prefer this over surgery, then that's great for as long as it lasts. But it might also not last forever. And just because you change your mind or your circumstances change or things, so that then you speak to the surgeon again. But surgeons are usually offering the surgery for pain and function reasons, so that you can no longer tolerate the pain, you're no longer able to do your job or do the activities that are most important or needed of you in your day-to-day life. And so that's the reason for proceeding.
yeah. I want to sort of turn our attention to the research aspect. I mean, everything you've been talking about, at one point you learned because you were doing research in these areas, you understood what was being published in the literature, you know, you had your clinical training and experience as well. When you think about today and what you did in the research world, Catherine, what are some pearls you can offer to the person who's starting out in research in occupational therapy? What would you say to them today?
So I've had the benefit of working with multidisciplinary teams and people living with arthritis in almost all of my research. And for a very long time, because we were criticized for having patients as co-authors in some of our early studies. And so some people today couldn't believe, some people would still criticize us, but most people can't believe that there was a time that wasn't today. That
Right.
wasn't the way things were happening today. So now it should seem like perfectly common sense that you'd ask people who are living with arthritis, what's most important to you? And engage with them as partners in the research process so that you're asking, not just asking the right questions, because as a clinician with a lot of experience and having heard a lot of patient stories, you can probably come up with questions that are really relevant and important to people living with arthritis and the practitioners that work with them so that you're offering better treatments. But you can miss something if you don't come at it from different perspectives. So having more than one discipline on the research team and having more than one patient on the team because you want to hear different perspectives will help you recruit better so that the people who participate in the study are more broadly representative of the people who are living with arthritis. You'll ask better questions. You'll refine the major research question, but you'll also, I'm a real fan of qualitative research where you really hear the stories or hear from people in their own words what matters or what under what circumstances is this working, because a lot of the criticism, if you look at systematic reviews of the literature on splints, since that's what we're talking about, it'll say more research is necessary, or we don't know for whom this works under when or under what circumstances. And it's because they're not the study didn't spend enough time asking that part of the question. So like they'll tell you that 58% of splints are being used for the people who prescribe them, and that's terrible. We need to do more research. And I think, well, that's not terrible. That shows that a lot of splints are doing a lot of people a lot of good. So why did they stop using them? Well, I went for surgery. I didn't need this one. Anymore, or it doesn't fit anymore, or I lost it, or I left it in,
Or my dog ate it.
yeah, sort of all those different things, and I didn't get back to get another one. Or I'm not using it this month, but boy, can I tell you, when the next time I have a flare up, is it ever going to be the first thing that I go to in order to help me do these things? So I don't know, 58% success rate sounds pretty darn good to me, but I think we don't know the whole story. So like that's why you want to have a team, you not do it by yourself. That's why you want your team to have all of these different perspectives. Yeah, and I would say you actually want you want your team to have junior and senior people too. I think because every perspective is an important perspective in a well-rounded study.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I would say that that's pretty important, and also not giving up. Because you will hear some criticism about what is or is not feasible or what is or is not important. And I can't tell you the number of ideas that we tried to implement over the years that somebody now is doing a fantastic study on, but we were told it was not feasible or not important. So sometimes I say, we were just ahead of our time. That's the positive way to spin it, right?
Absolutely.
But maybe we didn't argue it, like maybe we didn't substantiate it enough, or we didn't our arguments were not compelling enough for that to really fly at that point in time, or it just wasn't their time.
But the tolerance, I think really the tolerance for a different approach wasn't there yet when you were pushing the tolerance level, right?
Yeah, and there was probably a way if we listened a little bit differently, think, okay, what is, like what would fly? And so, you got to get your foot in, you figure out how to get your foot in the door.
Well, I know so many pieces of your research, all of your research has been super innovative. And what I really take away from those pearls is obviously, this is self-interest here. Is patient engagement and involvement in your research. And I really love, you talk about the multidisciplinary approach. And I think here at Arthritis Consumer Experts, we're constantly talking about how lived experience is a discipline. That is part of a multidisciplinary approach in research. And when we start using language like that, it's amazing how it captures people's attention, and all of a sudden this approach is given, a higher mark, if you will.
Right.
If when you think about research, just in closing our conversation here, Catherine, much has been done about translating the knowledge that you hold, your community of physiotherapy holds, out to the people who really need it, but not only them, to other areas of expertise in your field, such as in physiotherapy or clinical rheumatology. Have you seen a change there with getting knowledge to the right users? And what more could be done?
Well, I think I've seen a change because, gosh, when I started, we used to have to type out our slides and send them to an audiovisual department that took photographs and actually made 35 millimeter slides out of it. So, like all this me all this media, so the way people can do infographics or they can film themselves on their phone and pop up a YouTube video and nothing. So I think there's a lot of different creative forms of sharing this. But on the other hand, because there's so many, people can be inundated with tons of information and knowing what's credible.
I was just going to say the
Yeah.
quality of that tons of information
Yeah.
varies. Yeah.
So it's really hard to know if you've got quality and accurate information and if it's credible. So you do need to do a little bit of research and look for indicators of credibility. So one of the changes I can say or in plugging occupational therapy is that the practice magazine that the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists has published for many years called OT Now or Occupational Therapy Now was a practice magazine in order to distill ideas and distill the research and get it out to practitioners, but it was always a member benefit, so it was behind a paywall. So as of this year, 2025, that's totally open access. So that means anybody can access it. So then that means you can tell stories to every audience. And so from time to time, an issue would be open access. So there might have been an issue on assistive devices, for example, that you would have then farmed out to physiotherapists and rheumatologists and the whole rehabilitation sector, as well as patients' family members who needed information on that particular topic. So the association shared special issues from time to time, but now they're sharing everything. So I think, and they're not going to be alone in that. So I think a number of different organizations, patient-led organizations, professional-led organizations are figuring out ways, because I mean you got to pay people to do this work. So there's reasons it was behind paywalls. They were using member fees to buy it, and members aren't going to join if they're
Right.
if what they're buying is available to everybody for free. So they had to figure out new models about
Yeah,
how
you
to
have
make
to
the
figure out
economics
what
work.
is the
Yeah,
value proposition
yeah.
for
Yeah,
a
yeah.
member.
So
Yeah.
new, models have to be figured out in order to make all of this accessible. But I think that's a change, is really talking about what open access looks like, and if it's a taxpayer funded research or it's consumer oriented research, if it's been paid for by that, then part of the cost of paying for it includes the dissemination of it. So then you can share that with different people, and then the popular media picks up on some of these stories. I'm always surprised at where a reporter contacts me and I think, like, how did you find me? From some publication or another, and they found it because the publication that they found was an open access one, and
Right.
they were interested in a similar topic, and they don't always that they have editors too, so not everything that they write gets out there to the big world, but sometimes it does. So I think it's that whole dissemination theory. It's like you blow
Right.
a dandelion puff and all those seeds go
Love that. Love that.
all
Very
over, and
cool.
some of them grow a new dandelion and some of them don't.
Yeah. I think also, our organization, when we founded 25 years ago, one of the reasons for doing that was to be able to set up some way, some forum to have conversations like this so that we could try to, in our own patient-friendly, patient-focused, patient-led way, have your voice heard. And we're so grateful that your voice has been, in our newsletters, in our studies as partners, in our broadcasts, Catherine. We're so grateful to you for the immense body of work that you led, co-created, disseminated, because people like me have benefited so greatly from your work. So thank you so much for sitting with us today, for being part of our hashtag See Arthritis event, but most importantly, just one heck of a human being who did so much fantastic work.
Well, you're very welcome, Cheryl. It's always a pleasure to chat with
Yeah.
you. And I think you're giving me more credit
No,
than is due because it's all part of it's all community led.
yeah,
So it's
that's
everybody
true,
coming together.
but
Yeah.
people have to light the fire, and you're a fire lighter, so we appreciate it very much. Thank you so much again. And I know this won't be the last time we speak, but it will probably be over coffee in the local
Yeah.
coffee shop.
Great.
Thank you again.
Good. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. We appreciate you dropping in. Bye for now.